Being brave, what a big topic. First thing I'd like to confess is that, honestly, what I'd like to do is change the topic title to Me and My Big Mouth. Because the reason I'm standing up here right now in this place talking about this topic is that Christine Pilkington, who organized this amazing conference, called me a few weeks ago, and she said, you know, I want you to be involved in this conference. I'd like you to speak. I don't know when, I don't know what exactly, but we had one of these fantastic conversations. You know, you really get on a roll. We had a great time. And a couple days later, she emailed me and she said, okay, I'd like you to be the closing keynote, and your topic is being brave. And I've already put your bio up on the website. Hope you don't mind. So here I am, following Premier Christy Clark and all these other women, and I'm not even allowed to be scared. Me and my big mouth. But luckily, as we all know, being brave is not about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway, which I am currently modeling. You know, you'll be relieved to know that I did not bring a PowerPoint filled with images of me climbing K2 with a broken leg, or rescuing children from burning buildings, or doing any of these amazing things that all these other women before me today have done. Because what I'm really talking about is everyday bravery. It's those little decisions that we make all the time that make a real difference in the kind of life that you lead. So let's face it, we all do scary things every day. Having children is probably one of the scariest things any of us will ever do. But I would like to say that now that my children are 13 and 17, actually having teenagers is the scariest thing in the world. There is a great quote, and somebody emailed me if you know who said this, but it's about having children that, having children is like letting your heart walk around outside your body. And I think that's really quite true. So what I'd like to do today is talk about the concept of everyday bravery and what it means to me, and why I think it's so important for us to try to do that, even if it means we're going to fall down more, we're going to fail more, and more people are going to disagree with us. I think this is different for everyone, the concept of what being brave looks like every day. I'm a big fan of the concept of nature and nurture, working in combination, and I think we're all a product of that. And the reason I say that is because I grew up in a family of 6 kids, 4 of us adopted, and I saw the inherent differences in all of us. You know, my little sister Trina and I are a really good example. We are not technically related, but we have the same parents, the same upbringing, the same environment, and she is one of the bravest people I know, but in a totally different way than me. I'm an extrovert, I'm a Leo, I'll go bungee jumping. But Trina is much more understated in her bravery and strength. She actually lives in Ontario, and she has 3 girls, 2 adopted, and she has a farm, and she has a full-time job, and she also runs a rescue organization for horses. So she goes to these auctions and she outbids the dog food guy on a regular basis and saves these horses that are on their last legs, brings them home, nurses them back to health, and finds good homes for them. And she's adoptaprelovedhorse.com, that's my little plug for her. But she is one of the strongest and bravest people I know. But if you met her, you wouldn't automatically say that about her. You know, this everyday bravery concept, so I'm going to try and define what I mean by that. The first part of it, I think, really is knowing yourself. And, you know, you can go on the internet, you can do all sorts of tests, you can do your insights and your MBTI, but I would like to challenge you to be brave enough to actually ask people who know you what you're like. And because the test, you can say, oh, it's a stupid test, right? But really, ask people who know you, what are you like? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What do they think you're like? Because this is just like customer service 101, right? The customer's perception is their reality. So if I think I'm a certain way, and I ask my friends and my mentors and my bosses and everyone around me, what they think I'm like, and it's different. What's the reality? That's the reality I have to deal with, is what they think I'm like. So that's one piece. The second piece, I think, is about clarifying your values. We do a lot of work on values at the Minerva Foundation. And I think it's really important to clarify your values and know what's really important to you, because it helps you make decisions and do the right thing. 18 years ago, my husband Dan and I were living in Toronto. We grew up near there, and we were living the Toronto rat race lifestyle. We had a house and good jobs, and I worked for the government. I was actually a gambling investigator. That's a whole other story. But my husband Dan was in property management, and everything was fine until we had our first baby, David. All of a sudden, that rat race lifestyle was really not working for us, because I had a job where I had to travel all over the province and strike fear into the hearts of bingo hall owners. And it was a very important job. And Dan's job was really stressful. And so when we got the idea that maybe we wanted to change our lifestyle, and we didn't want to necessarily do this thing for 30 years, we got the idea to move to Vancouver. And we literally jumped at the chance. We sold our house, quit our jobs, and got on a plane with our 2-year-old. And people thought we were kind of crazy, because they would say, oh, I would never go if I didn't have a job, a transfer, oh my God. But it really didn't seem that scary to us, because it matched our values. We knew exactly why we were doing it, and it was the best decision that we ever made. I'll tell you a funny story. When we first got here, I probably shouldn't tell the story, but I will anyway. When we first got here, I said to Dan, we're not going back. I don't care if I have to table dance. We're not going back. I was younger then, and thank God for Vancouver. It never came to that. But anyway, he ended up working from home, being an entrepreneur, and I became a stay-at-home mom because I had another baby. And I was at home for 7 years. And then, after 7 years, it was time for me to go back into the workforce. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I did not want to be an investigator anymore. I didn't have a business network here, and I had never worked in Vancouver. So I was starting from square one. Ironically, I ended up finding a company that did a program that's actually very similar to one that Minerva does, called Minerva Helping Women Work. But it didn't exist at the time, and so I went to this company, and it was for executives who were not from the city or were radically changing what they wanted to do. And it was a great decision, because I found one of the biggest mentors of my career there. His name was Brian. And this was the kind of program where you could do all sorts of workshops and all sorts of discoveries and stuff. But I noticed a lot of the people in the workshops were not really doing what was recommended. And it was because a lot of it was really scary. We had to really look at our strengths and our weaknesses and the things that we were concerned about, and we had to do it one-on-one and in group settings. And one of the things that scared me at the time was that I was pushing 40. I was about to turn 40. And I was thinking, some of these companies I want to work for are just too cool, and their demographic is too young, and I'm not going to fit in. And Brian, my mentor, he knew this. So during one of the mock interviews, he said to me, you're too old for this job. And everybody around the table was like, oh my God, they can't say that. An employer can't say that. And he said, you're right, they probably won't say it, but they might be thinking it. So deal with it. So I learned then that if there are obstacles and things that you need to overcome and weaknesses and things that are worrying you, it's much better to figure out, well, do I want to overcome this obstacle, and do I know why? And then deal with it, and deal with it up front in the interview. But I know that because I jumped into that process and embraced it, I know that because I attacked it that way, I re-entered the workforce here instead of here. And I jumped into the whole informational interview thing. They told us to go and do informational interviews with people. And so I cold called presidents and CEOs all over Vancouver, and miracle of all miracles, it got easier and easier and easier. Until one day, I cold called the managing director of the Vancouver Board of Trade and got 20 minutes with him. And I was pretty prepared. I was fine. I was feeling really confident because I had done all these informational interviews, and I knew why I was there, and I knew about the organization and what I thought I could contribute. The only problem was my resume, because I didn't know if they were hiring, but I was pretty sure that if they weren't looking for a gambling investigator with a BA in Spanish. So the whole goal was to keep him away from the resume. Keep him talking. Don't look at the resume. So I managed to do that until the very end. The only time he looked at it was to write sales on it. He gave it to the director of membership marketing, and the next day I had a job offer. So that segues into my next piece of everyday bravery, which is believing in yourself. And it's pretty hard to do, but the key really is to just practice it and let yourself fail and let yourself make mistakes. And if you can do that, you'll start to believe in yourself more often, I think. But another key to being brave, I think, is believing in others. Because I think that, believing in others takes a lot of trust and faith. And it's scary. There's a risk. And so we often don't do it. But I think it's really important that we do that. Because, first of all, in my experience, people generally rise to what you expect of them. And you get better relationships with them as well if you start based on trust and faith. So, the other piece I want to talk about is just, because I think that we all know, making mistakes helps us grow. But really, we don't actually practice that. Because we're really hard on ourselves when we do make mistakes, and we're really hard on others. And I think we often are in environments, whether they're at home or at work, where making mistakes is not okay. It causes a problem, and it's not okay. And so I think it's important for us to make mistakes in public and model that it is okay, and also for us to model how to make a mistake. Because there are steps, you have to own it, you have to apologize, you have to fix it, you have to figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again, and then you have to move on. And the hardest two parts of that are own it and move on. But I think that's really important that we model that. And I think it's up to us to create environments where it's okay for people to fail forward. Then there's risk. I think a lot of women are, I'm going to be general here and say women, but because I think it's true. I think a lot of women are risk averse because I think that our failures and our mistakes, actually, we take them very personally. So what happens is, a man might be running a project and it all fails and, goes to hell in a handbasket, and there's other people involved and there's other factors involved, and he's perfectly willing to recognize those and take blame as well. But when we make mistakes and something goes wrong, we get out the cat of nine tails and we do the whole 3-month self-flagellation and it's all our fault. And I'm thinking, well, if we're ready to say when we do well, it wasn't just me, there was a team and all these people helped and there was these other factors involved, we have to be able to do that when we fail too. Otherwise, we'll never take risks. And that's really going to hold us back. So that actually kind of segues into playing it safe. Because the question is, well, what's so bad about playing it safe, really? What's the big problem? Well, my argument would be, first of all, if playing it safe is actually one of your top values, then you're probably ignoring this whole presentation, or you've already left. But I would like to argue that playing it safe doesn't actually keep you safe. A few years ago, I was working for an organization, and I came to the sudden realization it was time for me to go. I was a loyal, hardworking, passionate employee, but there came this moment where I just knew it was time for me to go. So I gave lots of notice, tendered my resignation, put it out there to my network and colleagues and people who mentor me, and said, you know what, I just know it's time to go, and I know that the next thing I'm going to is going to be even better. And my whole philosophy around that was leap and the net will appear. And one of my mentors, a very wise woman, said to me, you know what, because you have that attitude, that's exactly what's going to happen. And it did. But one of my colleagues, who I left behind at that organization, she had a different philosophy. Hers could be summed up as, you'll have to pry this desk out of my cold, dead hands. She, needless to say, did not leave, and a year later she was laid off. And I would like to suggest that she had more stress in that year while she was clinging onto her desk than I had taking the leap and moving on to something that matched my values. And so playing it safe didn't keep her safe. And she was operating from a space of fear and mistrust and denial. And I think that if you're operating from that place, you can think it's safer and less stressful, but it's not. And the only thing that I think you need to know if you're doing that in any aspect of your life is that people see it. You know, we all know those people who do operate from fear and mistrust and denial, and they're judgmental and territorial and all that stuff. And people see it, everyone sees it, and it doesn't reflect well on you. Knowing yourself and knowing your values so that you can do the right thing, and believing in yourself and believing in others, what are all those things? Like, to me, that's leadership. So I think everyday bravery is actually a big part of leadership, maybe the biggest part. And when I came on board at Minerva just over a year ago and took on the CEO role, we went through this process of redefining our vision and mission and values. And our vision is really exciting. It's changing the face of leadership in BC. But one of the problems we had when we were developing that is that we run a whole suite of values-based leadership development programs, but we also do other programs in which women would not self-identify as leaders. We run Minerva Helping Women Work for women who are going back into the workforce after being at home raising kids or coming from another country. We give out education awards, and we also work with Aboriginal women at all stages and ages of their life. And a lot of these women would not identify themselves as leaders. So how could that vision work for them? And the answer, of course, is that leadership isn't about your title and how many people you supervise. It's about personal leadership. And I'll tell you a couple stories about that that will illustrate what I mean. There's a woman named Anna who came to this country as an immigrant. She was a judge in Brazil. And she came with 3 kids, single mom, and the only job she got offered when she was here was to work the front counter at a dry cleaner's. This is a very common story, of course, well-educated immigrants. And Anna came to our program, Minerva Helping Women Work, and she worked really hard, and she is now a tribunal court judge. Wow. Yeah. And so to me, that's bravery and personal leadership. There's another woman, she's really an amazing woman in Minerva. She is an Aboriginal woman who lives up north, and she's been now through 2 Minerva programs. And she sent us a video recently to talk about how she's changed. In fact, the video was that her project for her latest program she was in was her life. Because she was an alcoholic, was in a job that didn't match her values, was really struggling. And now she is sober, she's got a great new job, she's got a great family life, and she has become a real catalyst in her community. And this is what her video story told us. So to me, those women are incredible leaders. They just didn't know it. They needed somebody to believe in them. And that's kind of what we all need. So I want to ask you, if there's somebody in your life you think you could support more, you could believe in more, trust in more, is there a difficult conversation you need to have, something you need to try to do that you're scared to do, a bull you need to take by the horns? Because supporting people is really important. So many people have done that for me, and actually the most recent example is when I decided to try to be the CEO of Minerva. And I was doing a contract at the YWCA, and my boss, Janet Austin, when I told her, I said, I really want to try for this job, she said, absolutely, you should do that, and I'll help you. But I also had a friend who, when I told her I was going to try for this job, she said, oh my God, aren't you scared? And I said, well, I am now. But it was the best thing I ever did, because this organization not just matches my values, it matches every single one of them. And I've been telling people ever since I got here that I feel like I'm exactly where I should be. So I'm so glad that even though I was scared, I did that. So when I am scared, which is often, I ask myself, is it the right thing to do? Will it help someone? will it make me better? And what's the worst thing that can happen? And can I live with that? And if after asking those questions, I know that I should do it and I'm still scared, then I say, suck it up, Buttercup. And I do it anyway. Thank you.